Hi everyone, my name is Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, and this is your weekly space hangout for August 2nd. The summer is almost over, 2013. So this week we are going to be talking about images of asteroid DZ15, how comet Ison might or might not fizzle, the minimum solar maximum, the polarization of the cosmic microwave background radiation, the more information on the spacesuit leak that happened a couple of weeks ago, the Japanese launch that's going to be happening tomorrow, and a new supernova in M74. So joining me this week, a few familiar faces, so I'll get to those first. We've got Sandy Springman down at the Arecibo Observatory. Sandy.
Hi.
We've got David Dickinson.
Hey,
Trusty, dependable David Dickinson. In Florida, aka Astroguys, and we've got from a long hiatus, traveling, who knows where she's been.
I don't know either.
Everywhere, Nicole Gallucci. But now you're back home.
I've been everywhere,
I'm home.
I've been everywhere.
Yes, that.
And we've got a fresh recruit this week. We've got Brian Koberlein, who has been doing a fantastic job of reporting all kinds of cool space stuff on Google+. Brian, can you give people a bit of a background on who you are and what you do and what you know?
I'm an astrophysicist. I'm a physics professor at Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York. I just finished a book on computational astrophysics, and I've been writing on Google Plus every day for 6 months now.
Yeah, seriously, if you haven't already, go and circle Brian on Google Plus. He has been using it as his blogging platform and just writing these terrific explainers on space and astronomy, some very accessible stuff, some that's quite technical but really interesting. I've been a huge fan of this, and that after Brian had been doing this, I was like, Brian, you got to join us. So, and then also, Brian, I think before we kind of get into the show, I wanted to give you a chance to promote something that you're working on, which I think is just fantastic. You're doing a Kickstarter for a television show.
Right. Well, we're doing a Kickstarter for a series of web videos first. And then we want to expand those into a TV show. It's called Prove Your World, and it's aimed at 8 to 13-year-olds, and its main purpose is to teach scientific understanding and what you might call habits of mind for that age group, how to approach scientific problems. And one of the things we're excited about it is it's based on real questions from kids, and it uses inquiry learning. It's not just here's a cool fact, here's a cool fact. It actually looks at the process of scientific learning, and it has puppets.
Yeah, and so I guess do a search for Prove Your World Kickstarter. You've got 15 days left, I think, on the Kickstarter now, so everyone should check that out and kick in a couple of bucks and help you guys be able to make that pilot and that first run of series. And you're not asking for a lot, and I think that'll be great. I think it's a great niche to teach the kids, so that's fantastic. Wait a second. What? Alan Boyle has joined us at the last minute. All hope was lost.
I don't know. You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, wow. It says I have audio problems. I've got all sorts of issues, but that's just me. You know, just go ahead with what you got. I'll get set up here. Glad to be with you after a little bit of travail.
Now, so that means that I get to add one topic to the list of stories we're going to be talking about today, right?
What topic would that be?
I hear you visited a secret facility in the Seattle area.
Oh. Do you want to talk about that now?
I totally want to talk
Blue
about
Origin.
I totally want to talk about that right now. I want to push everything one down the list and get to hear this. So if people don't know, Alan Boyle had exclusive access to the Blue Origin facility. This is the rocket launch company being created by Jeff Bezos from Amazon fame. What happened?
Well, I think the only reason why I got to go down there is because I live in the area, and Blue Origin wanted to
I live in the area.
Well, you can't come down when they call up in the morning and say, hey, can you come over to Kent and talk with Rob Meyerson. But anyway, Blue Origin was actually, they built this facility, 7 years ago, but they really haven't had any journalists interests in. It's just the sort of thing where they work very quietly. Some might call it hush-hush or secretive. They just don't want to talk about stuff until they have stuff to talk about, and so they want to talk about an issue having to do with Kennedy Space Center's Launch Pad 39A, one of the launch pads that the shuttle used and is now considered surplus. NASA wants to turn that over to a commercial facility, and SpaceX has applied to get that pad. SpaceX was founded by billionaire Elon Musk, and now Blue Origin, which was founded by Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos, also would like to have control of that launch pad, and so they wanted to get the word out about that, and I think they figured if we're going to talk with this guy who's in the neighborhood, sure, why don't we bring him down and see if he gets into any trouble. So I had to be on my best behavior, but they did sign me in at Blue Origin headquarters. They said I'm the first journalist to actually be in there, and it's a really nice place, I got to tell you that. They have like a 2-story high rocket sculpture with a fireplace in the lobby. They've got a 10-foot wide globe that is kind of one of the part of the decor for the lobby. They have models of the Starship Enterprise from the Star Trek movies in the lobby. Another place they've got Discovery 1 from 2001 hanging from the ceiling. They've got a little model from Silent Running of these geodomes along a hallway, and it's a nice place. And
so this fancy description of the decor is you setting us up for the fact you can't talk about anything else, right?
No, I can, I didn't see very much. They kind of took me in. It's not as if they took me to their big production facility where they actually build the rockets, although you could see that. They have a test range in Kent as well, just a little test stand, and you can see that from the street. So there are lots of stuff. There's lots of stuff you can see from outside the building, and I've seen that before, but I've not been let into the inner sanctum before, and so that was something new.
So what is the plan? I mean, what is Bezos's plan with this company? Because we've seen so much about SpaceX, and they've been moving in leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
And it feels like Blue Origin has been, as you say, sort of toiling away in quiet mystery for almost a decade now.
It's funny. Happen? Yeah, it's funny how people used to think of SpaceX as the upstart, kind of the scrappy underdog, but now SpaceX looks like it's really in a great position to make itself one of the top companies in spaceflight, as far as getting stuff to the International Space Station and eventually sending astronauts. And so you have companies like Blue Origin, which have been working in the background. They actually did some pretty ambitious tests. Unfortunately, one of their tests went awry when they had a test propulsion vehicle go supersonic, but then it had some flight instability, and they had to get it crashed. So that was definitely a setback. But it's also a challenge. SpaceX also poses a challenge to the established players such as United Launch Alliance. And so you have this interesting, strange bedfellow situation where United Launch Alliance and Blue Origin are teaming up for a multi-user launch facility that they want to turn Launchpad 39A into. And SpaceX wants to use this for a lot of its commercial launches, also the launches to the space station, as a dedicated facility just for SpaceX. And so that's the issue. Actually, in the last few days, NASA has been kind of signaling that they would probably turn 39A over to SpaceX, and that 39B, the other shuttle launch pad, would become a multi-user facility. 39B would also be used for tests of the Space Launch System, this big, heavy lift rocket that NASA is developing. So it's a very interesting clash of the billionaires. Right now it looks as if Elon Musk and SpaceX are in the lead, but Blue Origin wants to make its presence felt, and they have big plans to start sending stuff into orbit in 2018. In the meantime, they would operate the launch pad as a facility for their orbital tests, and also allow other people like United Launch Alliance and maybe some other launch providers to use that pad as well. But I have a feeling that NASA is going to announce a decision on this pretty quickly, because they want to turn over this pad by October 1st.
So, I mean, you really get the feeling with all the conversations that you've seen in the interviews. I don't know, have you had a chance to interview Elon Musk? He's a true believer. He's one of us. He is absolutely dedicated to putting humans in space and keeping them there and maybe letting them go to Mars.
Yeah.
You get that same feeling, like in the DNA of Blue Origin, that Bezos really wants this, or is it he see as another money-making opportunity?
I do, but I also get a very strong feeling that Jeff Bezos has to be careful about this, because he is, he runs a publicly traded company. I think that's why you see so much restraint, is that Jeff wants to make sure that this does not interfere with how Amazon.com goes about its business, and so that's why he's keeping a bit lower profile. And he does have a fortune that is about 8 to 10 times as rich as Elon Musk's, so he doesn't have to worry about fundraising or getting contracts. I really haven't talked with Jeff Bezos about this, but I have talked with Rob Myerson, who is the president of Blue Origin, and he says that Jeff is willing to keep at this for 10, 20, 30 years, that he does believe in this, and that his goal of making access to space cheaper and more reliable, he hasn't wavered from that goal for a decade, and he expects it to continue.
Wow.
It's interesting.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think that's...
They need to hurry up. I'm getting old, so
Right.
my jetpack's not here yet. So.
Okay, great. Well, I am super jealous, and next time they
I
put
think
together a list.
I'm hoping that they'll be able to invite some more people, and I think that you do see a change, that as they get more toward operations that they want to tell people about, that's when they're going to start opening the doors a little more freely.
Yeah. Okay, great. So now this is great. Now, if anyone knows Universe Today, we wrote an article. David, you wrote an article on, I guess, about a week ago about asteroid DZ15, and requested a little telescope time on Arecibo.
Nancy threw it my way, and I had kind of heard about it, but it hadn't really grabbed my interest. It was 2003 DZ15 passed, I believe it was 9 lunar distances from the Earth.
It was really close. It was like 20 seconds round trip at its closest.
Yeah, so
like
usually my rule of interesting for backyard astronomy is either closer than the moon or brighter than 10th magnitude. So it didn't quite, I think it reached about 14th magnitude at its closest, so I didn't try to go after it telescopically. But we did write an article because I think it was iTelescope or somebody was running it live. They were going to do a broadcast for it. So we began talking about, and usually in my course of writing up the article, I wondered if anybody at Goldstone or anybody was going to actually ping this asteroid. So I got to talking to Sandy down at Arecibo about prospects of whether you guys were going to go after it or not.
And so I went on Horizons, but misread one of the columns and said, oh, it's a little too far away. And then we looked at it again and we realized actually we could do it. And so we were wondering why this object wasn't on the usual Arecibo list, because if something's coming this close, it was about 20 seconds away for a while, usually we can nab it. And it turns out that when it was first observed in 2003, they didn't have a very good orbit for it, so it was lost for a number of years. And around July 20th, a lot of amateurs started looking at it, and they sent in some measurements to the Minor Planet Center, and that improved the orbit enough that we could actually look at it. So thank you, amateurs, with your big telescopes.
Yay.
And thank you, or relatively big telescopes. Thank you, amateurs in general. Anyone who looks at near-Earth asteroids, we like you a lot.
14th magnitude is reasonable for a large scope under dark skies to go after.
I mean, we did things like that in undergrad, and we had a 24-inch telescope, but we had a 24-inch telescope. Most folks don't have those. Yeah. So we had a 4-day weekend last weekend, and the boss was heading out of town, and we were heading out of town. He said, when you get back in on Monday, write an urgent proposal. So we wrote an urgent proposal on Monday. It was accepted on Tuesday, and yesterday afternoon, Can I screen share? I want to screen share. Yesterday afternoon, we got some lovely little images of 2003 DZ-15, the first object requested over Twitter at Arecibo Observatory.
That's so
Oh,
cool.
I didn't realize we made history. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was the first Twitter-induced urgent proposal. So it looks like an asteroid.
Twitter target of opportunity.
Oh my gosh.
Two.
I wish this had all happened before I wrote the Sky and Telescope article. I could have dropped that whole story in there about
Oh yeah, well I mean
Twitter's
this might...
being used to alert astronomers for things.
So yeah, there you go. There's our happy little asteroid. It looks like a smudge. It's it's really small. So while we can get 7.5 meter resolution, it's still 100 meters across, 200 meters across. It's not terribly large.
Yeah, it was about 150. I think it was about the size of the Tunguska impactor, right in that range.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in? Is it actually resolved here, or is there
kind
that
of.
like noise? How much of that is?
So the white object,
real?
the white is reflection. So this isn't actually an image. This is a delay Doppler map.
Mhm.
So the vertical axis, that is distance away. So the transmitter, think of the transmitter being down here. The first echo bounces off the front of the asteroid. The second echo bounces off a little further back. Then the x-axis, that's Doppler. So that's
Frequency.
how
Okay.
fast this thing is rotating. So this is a little bit of a frequency spread. So this is,
Okay.
it's not very big, so it might be rotating slow, it might be rotating fast, but it's just kind of tiny, so it's not going to look great. But you
So
can
it's good-
reprocess it and make it look a little wider. But yeah,
So
it
good to
looks
point
like an
out, it's
asteroid.
not an actual it's not an actual image, right? This is data that's being interpreted in a different way.
Yes,
It's the frequency versus the delay.
Yeah, it's the frequency. It's how far away it is, and then how fast it's rotating. So yeah, I mean, and it's probably not a binary. I don't think it's doesn't have a moon or anything. But you don't really see small asteroids that have moons or are equal-sized binaries. That doesn't seem to be a case. There's a cutoff. I don't know, around 300 meters. So.
I looked a little bit ahead in the projections, and this was the closest pass for this century for that asteroid too.
Yay! And we
There's
got it.
one
I mean,
in-
we would have loved.
There's one
could
in
have said-
2056, I think, that's nearly as close. So if we're still doing Google Hangouts, we can talk about it again in 2056.
Right.
Be implanted in your skull.
Yeah. Doesn't that feel? This feels like a bit like a movie, like we're in Battleship or something, and you're presenting this. I'm seeing this strange object at the very limits of.
Can you zoom
of
in
my.
one more time?
Oh, you want to see it again?
And no. Oh, you want?
No,
to
yeah,
see,
zoom in one more time. I'm going to take a screenshot and post it in the...
You want to enhance and magnify? Can you enhance and magnify?
No.
Do I see some kind of laser system on the edge of that? It's a planet killer. No.
Yes, nerds. DS9 is the name of the program she's using to
Oh,
display
yes.
the image, and it is named after the Star Trek series.
So the previous version was called TNG.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're dorks at Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory
Yep.
who make this software. We love them to death. We love everyone at SAO who makes excellent software and excellent products to help us keep doing astronomy. So thank you. Yeah, it's an asteroid. Yay, this is what we do. It's great here. I like zapping rocks. It's lots of fun.
Speaking of rocks that need to be zapped, Comet Ison.
I'm going to bow out.
No.
You're gonna bow up. Well, thank you for bringing the images of your asteroid. Feel free to bring
Anytime.
more anytime. All right,
Yeah.
thanks, Sandy.
Tell your Congress people that planetary is great and they should keep funding, Arecibo Observatory. Since we don't vote here, we don't have Congress people. So, cheers.
Right, so Comet Ison, which had sort of, I guess we have been, or it has been the comet of the century, the comet of our lifetime, the greatest comet that will ever exist and will ever be seen, and
Or
we
not.
have been, or not, and we have been trying to really manage people's expectations that, well, it might be great, might not be great, we won't know until it goes behind the sun.
Comets
But-
are fickle. Comets
Yeah.
are fickle.
But
The
This-
wackiness has already begun.
But this week there's a bit of a controversy, and someone had posted some research that in fact the comet was going to suck.
It was an interesting study, actually, what went around Twitter and the internet. It was Monday night, was a paper that came out. I first saw it on the AVSO, the American Association of Variable Star Observers. They tweeted it out, which is a pretty reliable source, so it caused me to grab the attention. It said that Comet Ison was going to fizzle. Is exactly, I believe, is what the words was. That it was
Comet Ison
it was
will
already
fail.
proclaiming. Now, this came out of a researcher at the Department of Physics and Astrophysics Computational Group in Columbia, in the country Columbia, University of Columbia, down in Medellin. So it was kind of an odd source. It wasn't one that usually you see a lot, but again, it came through enough channels that it merited my attention. And the first thing when I think, well, I'm going to write an article is I look in the back end of Universe Today to see if Jason or Nancy haven't already written 3 articles about it. And Nancy was already working on an article about it, so I kind of laid off. I tweeted a little bit about what my conjectures were and my whole armchair pundit view of Comet Ison and stuff. But it was interesting to note how many, I believe the Weather Channel ran with it, a bunch of people ran with it and started publishing Ison is a dud articles immediately. Nancy, I think, took about 24 hours to get hers out, and I kind of felt for her because I watched on the back end of WordPress where I could see her revisions going on, and I could see that she was really researching it and interviewing. She interviewed, I don't know, the handle is @Sungrazers on Twitter. I don't know who's behind the handle, but she interviewed a bunch of people for the post that were experts on it and kind of put a sanity check on the whole post saying that, you know, these researchers don't have access to any other information that the rest of researchers, they don't have any kind of exclusive access to this information. I personally think, since the original paper was in Spanish, that maybe a few things, I've seen this before on Twitter and on the internet where things get put into Google translators and they come across with a different tone than what they're supposed to when they're what was originally intended. So, but it was an interesting study to see how quickly everybody jumped on the Ison fizzle bandwagon within minutes to hours. That was like all over the internet and all over the message boards too.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you see this kind of thing quite a bit, but I guess they want to take what's the British term? They want to take the piss out of it. They want to, you know, everyone has been so effusive about what this comet could possibly do, and
you almost just have to drop the word Ison into a room full of journalists, and they're just like feeding piranhas right now,
chumming the water.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and so for someone to kind of go against the grain and say, well, no, and I guess the point is that they didn't really bring anything new to the table, and so they said the same thing that we've all been saying, which is it might be great and it might suck, and we won't know until it goes beyond the sun, and we're not going to know until November. Be patient, please.
I interviewed John Bortle. He's been researching comets for quite some time and observing comets for the last few decades. A few months ago. And I kind of fall in the same camp where he was saying, you know, it's not going to reach 10th magnitude, which is about the range of a backyard telescope to binoculars, probably till late September. So I think we're going to see a lot of these has Ison fizzled articles coming out over the next few months. And we've said over and over again, I think perihelion at the end of November is where it's really going to be crucial. If it survives perihelion, comes back around, we're going to have a bright Christmas comet this year. If it goes toward perihelion and breaks apart, we're going to have nothing. We're going to have Comet LNN from a few years ago did the same thing.
Yeah, I was going to add, Sungrazer is Carl Badams at the Naval Research Laboratory, and he's one of the organizers of the Comet Ison observing campaign. So they're watching it closely. You know, it might fizzle, it might be a real star, but in any case, it's going to be an interesting focus of scientific observation, and that's what the Ison campaign is all about. And in fact, I think they're in the last hours of a conference that's being live streamed about getting ready for Comet Ison. If you go to isoncampaign.org, I think you'll probably get to the links to the live stream, and they've been talking about this for the last day or two.
Yeah, Ison's on the other side of the sun right now, so we're not getting good looks at it.
Right.
And I think a lot of sites are kind of jumping the gun on their how to observe Ison posts at the end of August, because it's still going to be very faint and hard to find, and in the morning sky still. I'm probably not going to put together a big blow-by-blow how to observe Ison post till late September or so, because then we're going to start. It's going to come in range of amateur telescopes at that point.
Do you think you'd write a story saying, okay, nothing to see here, forget it, it's all off?
I'd hate to. It would break my heart to write something like that. I hope we. Yeah, if it started breaking apart, I think, you know, there will be a point when it's going to be beyond like reproach. But it's like I haven't had a good visual comet from my backyard since Hale-Bopp, really. I missed, what was the one in
Hyakutake?
2006? No, Hyakutake I got. There was one in 2006, went to the Southern Hemisphere. Not Mackholtz. Or was it Mackholtz?
McNaught?
Comet McNaught. Yeah, one of the McNaughts. You're right, because he discovered several. There was a bright one, but that wasn't good for North. We haven't had a good Northern Hemisphere comet since Hyakutake and Hale-Bopp.
I actually was visiting Phil Plait, and he brought out his telescope, and we looked at McNaught together.
Yeah, Southern Hemisphere gets all
was
fun.
Good times.
Good times, good times. Where's Phil? He should be
I
here.
still remember Hale-Bopp was circumpolar, and you could watch it. I lived in Alaska at the time, but you could go out and watch it all night. It stayed above the horizon, continuously, so that was awesome.
Yeah. Okay, well, now we're going to give Brian a really simple, very easy to explain story about the polarization of the cosmic microwave background radiation, which we continuously joke in Astronomy Cast with Pamela, Dr. Pamela Gay, my co-host, that you could pretty much find anything you need in the cosmic microwave background radiation. Age of the universe, what's it made of, how big is it, what shape is it, it's all in there. So, Brian, what's the story?
Well, this is a series of observations. A paper was just published from the South Pole Telescope that was looking at polarization of cosmic microwave background light. And the reason why this is interesting is because most of the time when we think of the cosmic microwave background, we look at the brightness or the temperature variations, and we say, oh, well, that tells us something. But this is actually looking at the orientation of the light. And the reason it's important is because you get polarization from last scattering. So basically, the cosmic microwave background is the light when the light of the Big Bang is finally free. When the atoms have formed and now the universe is transparent, you can finally see through the long distances. Well, just before that happened, you had the kind of last scattering off of the ions. And when they scatter off the ions, you can get polarized light. And there's kind of two kinds. There's what's called E mode and what's called B mode, and they're named after the shapes are similar to electric and magnetic fields, which is why they're called E mode and B modes. And the original scattering is E mode. So what happened after that last bit of plasma after the Big Bang was E mode, and the B mode comes out in two ways. One is it can happen in gravitational lensing. So when light lenses around a galaxy, it can cause kind of a twist, if you will, to the orientation of the polarization. And so you can get localized B-mode polarization. And this is what they saw. So they saw the polarization from the gravitational lensing. But it's important for two reasons. One is it's a proof of concept, because there's a more interesting B-mode that we're looking for. And that would be on a cosmic scale. So you can look at local B-mode polarization, but if you look over the whole cosmic scale, you should see a B-mode pattern that comes from the inflationary period. So basically, you have the early universe really tiny, and then it enters the inflationary period and goes boom really fast. Basically, that's like ringing a bell. And so it creates gravitational waves. And those gravitational waves will rotate the polarization to create B-mode polarization. If we can observe that, then we will have evidence that the inflationary period is real. So we don't have to go with, well, it solves the problems. We don't have to do the indirect. We would then have direct evidence of the inflationary period. So what these guys did is they observed local B-mode polarization, which shows that we can find it. So now we'll see if Planck can see it.
So they sort of proved their method on being able to see this polarization, which then, if they can sort of scale this up, they might be able to really verify whether the inflationary period happened or didn't.
Right. So this was kind of, we detected it first, so they get first cred. And then there's other teams that are looking for it, but basically, as you do a sky survey of B-mode polarization, then you can map out what the inflationary period was.
Because we had actually talked about this. Dr. Matthew Francis had talked about this earlier, a couple of months ago, about how there was new evidence that maybe the inflationary theory was not quite as necessary as it had originally been, and there was so this is good. That I guess there's a new test that will maybe bring inflation back, or if they don't see it, or prove it wrong. So if they don't see it, will this be proving it wrong?
It'll put a big stake in it. It'll put a big stake in its heart. Because we've shown that we can find BMO polarization. So if we don't see it, then either the inflationary period didn't happen, or it happened in a way that we don't expect, and so we're not seeing what we think we see.
Now, for those who don't understand, the inflationary period, that's there to what is that there to explain? Why has that theory been created?
Well, it solves a couple of things. One is that if you look around the universe, it's very even. You don't get huge clumps over large scales. You see little clumps and stuff, but it's very homogeneous. And given the size of the universe, if there wasn't an inflationary period, there wouldn't have been time for hot spots to even out. There wouldn't have been time for cold spots to warm up and hot spots to cool down. And so the inflationary model posits that all of this kind of renormalization, the homogenization of the temperatures happened before the inflationary period when the universe was extraordinarily tiny. And then it inflated and it was already uniform. It also explains what's called the flatness problem. Why is the universe globally, why does it globally appear to be flat? Because it shouldn't be unless there was some mechanism like inflation that would cause that.
Right, and with flat, like if you take two parallel lines,
right, you take two laser beams, they should keep going.
Yeah, together,
basically,
forever.
Yep.
Or hit you in the back of the head, but that's a whole other conversation. So, okay, great. So, when do you think this experiment, when will Planck sort of be able to make this experiment and get us to the bottom of this?
I'm not sure of the exact timeline. Usually, they do kind of a 2-year survey, so every 2 years. I'm not sure when they're scheduled to come out with the Planck survey.
And if they do, as you say, put a stake in inflation, what does that mean for this mystery? Is it back to square one?
The theory guys do a happy dance and we start playing around with ideas.
Wow.
The theory guys can get grant money again.
Yeah. Oh, right. So because inflation was canon at this point?
Yeah. It's not canon, but it is the strongest candidate for explaining what we see. So it's one of those things that happens in astrophysics sometimes where we have a really good idea. It matches what we see, but we have zero evidence for it directly. We can say, oh, it solves this, it solves this, it solves this. It's a great idea.
Just don't feed the conspiracy theorists that want to overthrow the Big Bang Theory, where they say, "Oh, there's something wrong with it."
That's going to come up again. Yeah, I mean, if we don't find inflation, you can bet that the Big Bang doubters will start coming up with models again.
As something to say, steady state must be. We have to go back to the Hoyle era.
Right.
Michael Breslin just said on YouTube that we need to go long today. He's got a 3.5-hour car ride and needs material. I'm sorry. I don't think we can go 3.5 hours. I don't think we're going to last another 15 minutes. Okay, let's move on.
You can get this in your car?
Yeah. It's like maybe it's a Tesla. Okay, so now, Alan, have you been tracking this Japanese launch that's going to be happening tomorrow? Have you been...
Not closely, but one of the interesting things about the Japanese launch is that there are a number of CubeSats on that launch. You know, this is, and so we've written about the CubeSat phenomenon, and I believe that ArduSat, this Kickstarter type campaign, is going to be one of the CubeSats to be launched once the Japanese HTV vehicle gets up to the space station. And so I think we're really seeing kind of a commercialization through the back door of kind of these nano satellites going up as part of the payload. NanoRacks, which is the commercial concern that's headed by Jeffrey Manber of Mir fame, is organizing a lot of these CubeSat deployments. And so we might see kind of under the radar commercialization of space station operations through launches like this. And so that's kind of my main interest in the HTV launch. But
I'd like to point out, too, that the ISS is starting a series of North American and European passes where it's going to be visible, so that means anything going to dock with it is going to be visible, too. So if you have a visible ISS pass, you might want to watch for HTV4. I'll be tracking it on Twitter after it launches for visibility, but I have seen the ATV, the European ATV, following the ISS before or after docking. HTV is going to take 6 days to go toward docking, so it's going to be up there a while. It's interesting to watch as it approaches. I've seen Dragon approach the ISS before, and the shuttle when it was up too. It's always kind of neat to watch because you'll see them as two, like a bright star and a faint star passing overhead. So.
Very cool. Okay, so then the other thing is this update on the spacesuit leak that happened during the spacewalk, and we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, and it was pretty nerve-wracking situation where.
It was interesting to watch as it unfolded because I kind of had it going on one monitor when they're usually doing a spacewalk or anything space-related is going on, and I was working, and I kind of started turning attention toward it when Luca Parmitano, the Italian ESA astronaut, started having a leak. Reported water in his helmet. And you got to think, too, they were saying the water on this recent report, he actually talked some about it. There was a video on YouTube where he actually discussed a lot of what was going on at the time, and he said the water was up toward his ears and going toward his eyes and nostrils. Now you're in 0G too, so it's not necessarily going to pool down to the bottom of your helmet. So that's going to make it even scarier. You're going to get kind of that fishbowl kind of action going on. They got him in. It was an hour and 32 minutes into the spacewalk when they brought him in as soon as he reported the leak. They're not sure right now. They're still investigating. They're saying, Cassidy was quoted as saying that it was cooling water that got into the ventilation somehow. I know that Parmitano was saying, Cassidy was the other astronaut that was walking with him, spacewalking. Parmitano was saying that the water, it didn't taste like ordinary drinking water you have in the suit that's there available. It had a different kind of funny chemical taste to it initially, so it was actually somehow as coolant water was leaking into the suit, they believe. They're still investigating that. The Progress that launched this past weekend was bringing up equipment to repair that spacesuit. I know that they packed it on that Progress and that docked. That was on a fast track docking, so that only took like a little over 5 hours on 2 orbits to get up there. 4 hours and something, I believe it was. It was very fast. I watched the docking a few hours after that. But they got a lot of the initial stuff done they needed on that spacewalk. I know a lot of the other stuff they're going to have to do on a later spacewalk. They were prepping a lot, actually, for that Progress and the HTV and everything that's going up there. So I don't know when they're going to spacewalk again, but probably not till this investigation gets done.
Yeah, I don't think that there are any U.S. spacewalks scheduled anytime soon. I think at the time that Parmitano had this problem come up, they talked about how there are Russian spacewalks that are coming up, but the U.S. spacewalks, they can put that on hold for a while.
It's ironic, there's been a lot of sci-fi disaster spacewalks that are, I know with Gravity coming out, everybody's seen the trailer for that. Europa Report, I just saw that last night. Awesome movie. I broke down and rented it on Amazon, so that had a spacewalk gone bad in it as well. Pretty accurate movie. I was impressed.
Yeah, I liked it too. We could talk about that.
Yeah, let's definitely. Yeah, I hadn't put this on the list, but in fact, I have been wanting to see this. I'm not sure where I can see it in Canada though. So
it's on a very limited release. It's an indie film, so it's probably going to percolate out through the theaters. It's on release today, but it's like 4 theaters in the U.S. showing it. So that's when I saw the limited release, and it wasn't in the Tampa Bay area. I just rented it on Amazon. It was worth the $9 to get the 48-hour rental and watch it.
Yeah, generally speaking, if you have a cable system that has video on demand, you can rent it that way. That's how I saw it. But it's also available on iTunes. So today is just the first day, supposedly, that it's in the theaters. They had a premiere at the American Museum of Natural History, but it's been out for several weeks by these other methods of watching, and so. You know, this is the wave of the future, man. Yeah.
Well, if anyone
see it on your computer.
If anyone has watched it and is watching this right now, let us know in the comments what you thought of it, because we'd love to hear your ideas as well.
I thought it was neat, and nobody would notice this probably but me. Well, they must have, because they put it in the movie, is the fact that they showed that Europa has a synchronous rotation, that it keeps one hemisphere toward Jupiter all the time, like our moon does, because they showed Jupiter on the horizon when they landed, and I was kind of like, if they show it moving, it will change phases, but if you're on a certain location, it will always stay there at that certain location in the sky. And through their entire mission, Jupiter never moved off that horizon position. So that's kind of a neat little thing, but I thought it was kind of cool they added that in there.
So it's tidally locked like the moon is to the Earth. Yeah.
Like our moon. I believe all 4 Galilean moons are tidally locked like that. They always point toward Jupiter. So if you landed, I think you'd want to land on the far side of Europa just to have that extra protection from the radiation that the bulk of the moon. So they landed on the Jupiter-facing side, probably just because it was prettier, because you had Jupiter in the sky. So.
But then how can you get that? Yeah, that beautiful view of Jupiter dominating the sky. Have you seen it yet, Brian?
I have.
You have. What did you think?
I find this one and the trailer for Gravity interesting because they're kind of a new kind of science fiction movie. There's science fiction that's almost not science fiction. We're so used to the common science fiction where it's faster than light spaceships and aliens and everything else, and this kind of harkens back to the 2001 and those kind of movies where they're kind of near future projections.
Yeah, well, when you watch that Gravity trailer, it's terrifying. It really is, and you really can see those moments where the person has no way to get themselves back to a solid structure, and it doesn't matter, right? That rail that she's trying to reach for, it's this far away, but it doesn't matter. It might as well be light years away because you can't you have no way to move yourself towards it without
I will definitely
something
be
off
using that in my intro physics class.
Yeah. No, it was really well done. So I hope the whole movie stands up to the promise of the trailer. I mean, it sure looked like a catastrophic situation handled in really great detail. So I'm really excited to watch that one. What's it, Alfonso Conzarone? What's his name? The director.
Oh, I don't know.
Cordero?
Yeah, Conzarone. Anyway,
I thought it was kind of cool that the footage they used for the launch in Europa report was actually a real mission to Jupiter. Was the launch of Juno? I noticed that. I thought it was MSL at first when I looked at it because I knew it was a launch from the Cape. But when I watched through the credits, it was actually the NASA Juno mission that's going to be in Jupiter in 2015. I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've got one more story here that we're just going to quickly cover, and this is that there was a recent supernova in M74. Yep. Brian, where is M74?
I don't know what constellation. It's about 30. Go ahead.
It's up.
It's up.
It's up about 30 million light years.
Allow me to answer my own question.
It's about 30 million light years away.
The constellation
Pisces.
I can Wikipedia as fast as you.
Okay, really? Okay, M74, located in the constellation Pisces, has had a supernova.
2013 EJ.
Yes, and it's actually the third one in about a decade. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, it's very active. But it's a Type 2 supernova. We've been able to identify the hydrogen lines.
What does a Type 2 mean?
Okay, supernovas are broadly split into two types. So Type 1, you don't see any observable hydrogen lines. In other words, the light coming off of the supernova isn't giving off hydrogen lines. Type 2 gives off hydrogen. What we now know is that Type 1A is actually a different type from all the others. So Type 1A is a white dwarf that's feeding off of a binary partner. Mm. Type 2 and the other Type 1s are core collapse supernova. So they're big stars that run out of fuel and collapse in on themselves, and this causes this overheating that rips them apart. So this is a Type 2 supernova.
In fact, the astronomy textbooks are moving away from the Type 1, Type 2 descriptor.
Yes.
They call them white dwarf supernova and core collapse supernovas. So if you're learning astronomy now, you probably wouldn't even hear those terms.
That's right. Right. So this is a core collapse supernova. And the interesting thing is that after they identify the location, so they confirmed that it was a supernova, identified the location, and then went back to the Spitzer infrared telescope data and was actually able to find it. So they found the progenitor as a red supergiant, and it's this this very tiny speck on the Spitzer data, but we have it from about 2004. So
That's pretty rare, isn't it, to find that progenitor? Has that been done very often before?
Yeah, they try. It depends on when they have the sky surveys. So this is why sky surveys are useful.
Yeah, yeah, and these are these automated surveys of telescopes which
Right.
scan the sky and they build this beautiful map like the Sloan Digital Sky Survey. So
Pan-STARRS, yeah.
Pan-STARRS, and there are plans to do even higher resolution ones. And but was it the Type 1As? There's one kind that they still haven't found the progenitors, right? So they haven't
They
seen.
usually blow themselves apart.
Mm-hmm.
And they're small. They're white dwarfs. So core collapse you can find because they're fairly big stars. So if they're in a red supergiant stage or something, then they would be easier to see at millions of light years away.
Right, and I think it's what's interesting with supernova is that many of them are discovered by amateurs. This is one of these parts of astronomy that amateurs are able to really contribute a lot to the science and find these supernovae quickly and then trigger the astronomers to come back with a follow-up look. And I think this, the faster we can turn this around and go from the moment that supernova happens to an amateur discovering it and then an astronomer turning a big telescope on it to get that initial data is great. So if you're an astronomer and you know the night sky and you want to participate, there's real value there.
Yeah.
You need a daytime supernova near, not too close, like Betelgeuse or something like that.
Right.
We haven't had one since the invention of the telescope, so
That's
a nearby galactic supernova. We're due.
Overdue.
Yeah, Eta Carina, Betelgeuse.
But it could happen. It could happen across the galactic disk from us, and we'd never see it. It may have already happened sometime since the telescope was invented, and just because there's so much dust that we can't see it.
I believe Spica and Betelgeuse are the two closest candidate supernovas, eventual supernovas.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to be around for that. Who knows?
Oh, they're far enough away.
They're out of the kill zone.
Okay, all right.
They're out of the kill zone.
Phil played it.
There's
done the
nothing
Not as
math.
bright as the moon.
Yeah, it would just be
there's
super
none-
bright during the day. There's nothing that's going to kill us.
I think in Phil Plate's book is 200 light years. Is it what
Yeah.
they classify as the kill radius would be a bad day? We don't want too close.
Yeah, there are no supernova progenitors within that radius where the
We're in a
radiation
boring
would actually
neighborhood.
do harm to Earth.
Right.
We're fine.
We're fine. We're safe. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and thanks, everyone, for joining us. Now, before we go, I want to give everyone a chance to let people know where they can find out more. So, Alan Boyle, when you're not in secret facilities getting secret information and seeing wonderful decor, where do we find you?
Well, cosmiclog.com would work, or science.nbcnews.com, and on Twitter I'm B0YLE, which is too clever. So, but that's where to find me.
It was BOYLE?
It was
just
taken.
unavailable?
It was taken. I might have to talk to that person, whoever he is, and see if I can work out a deal.
Brian, where do we find out more?
You can find me on Google+. So I post every day. You can also find me on Twitter under my name, but basically anywhere. Look for my name. It's not very common.
Yeah, and again, I want to recommend that you specifically, well, circle everyone, of course, but definitely circle Brian and check out his series of postings, because it feels like you are running a website, and your website is Google+, and you're writing these articles there, and they're fantastic with great pictures and great descriptions, and it's just great. And once again, that Kickstarter, if people want to contribute to your show and help you get this first web series off the ground, what's it
Prove
called?
Your World. Prove Your World, and you can find it at proveyourworld.org or on Kickstarter.
That's great. All right. So kick in a couple of bucks, share the information with your friends. That would be great. David Dickinson.
I am AstroGuys with the Z on Twitter. This week I've been active over on Universe Today. I just had a large post this morning come out on the astronomical connection of the dog days of summer. If anyone wants to read that, it's very interesting, and there's an observational tie into that.
I'm intrigued. What a mystery. Someone should really go and check out. Everyone should go and check out that article on Universe Today. That sounds great.
Yeah. And I also have an article coming out on the Paraseids tomorrow on Universe Today. And I'm active over at listasaur.com, Canada.com, and supposedly the Weather Channel might be running some of my footage on an article on a show this weekend. Maybe they haven't told me if they're going to run it. They asked me for some footage of. I had a video of crepuscular rays, of a good example of crepuscular rays. Can't talk today. That they're doing a show on. I believe it's atmospheric phenomena. That I might get a 2-second showing on there. I don't know if they're going to show it or not.
It'd just be you pointing at a picture, crepuscular rays, and then just moving on.
That's me, like, just grabbing my camera one morning before coffee, and I had this awesome display of crepuscular rays over the house, and I did a quick video pan of it, put it on YouTube, because I'd never seen them that sharp and bright. I mean, it looked like the mothership was coming over the horizon. Is what it looked like. So,
that's great. Yeah, well, you know, the Parasides are sort of like our Christmas on Universe Today, and so we will be running a whole bunch of articles about this. I actually recorded a video just yesterday about it, so about how to enjoy the meteor shower, and we'll be mushing this all together. And
I have an observer's guide going out tomorrow on Universe Today. Weekend tends to get a little more exposure. It doesn't get like piled down under 20 posts right at the beginning. So.
And as we've been mentioning, this is a very special Perseids because the moon is absent, and you will have a nice dark view. So if you haven't already, I know I've been nagging this every week. Gather your friends and family, find a place with dark skies, and find a nice open field, and just enjoy the show. And if you
and you are right too. It's pronounced Perseids.
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 I looked it up online. It's like I say Parasides, but you know.
Finally,
actually,
I wonder what you were saying.
Finally, my wacky Canadian accent comes to my aid.
Yeah, it's actually pronounced Perseids, is what I saw online. So.
Mm-hmm.
And Nicole Gallucci, it's so great to have you back. Where do we find out more?
So I live at noisyastronomer.com. Noisy Astronomer is my Twitter handle, and I work for CosmoQuest, and I am finally back from almost a whole month of travel. I had a little break in there, and I was sick. But yeah, I'm back for another whole month before we go to DragonCon. So
you travel, so Pamela doesn't have to.
Except that she's in Europe right now.
She just traveled more.
That didn't work.
No. Yeah, I'm not going to be at DragonCon this year, but I will be at the Penny Arcade Expo for Labor Day weekend. So if anyone's watching this and wants to hang out at Penny Arcade Expo, I am in. I'll be bringing the kids, and we're going to have a good time. So in Seattle, and that's Labor Day weekend.
Okay, we'll be on the other coast in Atlanta, so come say hi.
Well, if you haven't already, subscribe. Wherever the subscribe button is, please do. Wherever you're watching this, just subscribe, and that way you'll get notifications. Although apparently the notifications are broken, so actually you won't get notifications when these new shows show up. But still subscribe anyway, because we've got lots of other good stuff that's happening. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us. I think the next thing, Friday, is going to be Sunday. We're going to do the virtual star party Sunday night, and we've got, I hope, a special guest that night, which is well, we'll talk about it in the post for the virtual star party. So okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks everyone for watching. Good job, Brian. Welcome aboard, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks.
Bye.
Trouble. So I had to be on my best behavior, but they did sign me in at Blue Origin headquarters. They said I'm the first journalist to actually be in there, and it's a really nice place. I got to tell you that. They have like a 2-story high rocket sculpture with a fireplace in the lobby. They've got a 10-foot wide globe that is kind of one of the part of the decor for the lobby. They have models of the Starship Enterprise from the Star Trek movies in the lobby. Another place they've got Discovery 1 from 2001 hanging from the ceiling. They've got a little model from Silent Running of these geodomes along a hallway, and it's a nice place. And
so this fancy description of the decor is you setting us up for the fact you can't talk about anything else, right?
No, I can, I didn't see very much. They kind of took me in. It's not as if they took me to their big production facility where they actually build the rockets, although you could see that. They have a test range in Kent as well, just a little test stand, and you can see that from the street. So there are lots of stuff. There's lots of stuff you can see from outside the building, and I've seen that before, but I've not been let into the inner sanctum before, and so that was something new.
So what is the plan? I mean, what is Bezos's plan with this company? Because we've seen so much about SpaceX, and they've been moving in leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
And it feels like Blue Origin has been, as you say, sort of toiling away in quiet mystery for almost a decade now.
It's funny. Happen? Yeah, it's funny how people used to think of SpaceX as the...
hi, everyone. My name is Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, and this is your weekly space hangout for August 2nd. August. The summer is almost over. 2013. So this week, we are going to be talking about images of asteroid DZ15, how comet Ison might or might not fizzle, the minimum solar maximum, the polarization of the cosmic microwave background radiation, the more information on the spacesuit leak that happened a couple of weeks ago, the Japanese launch that's going to be happening tomorrow, and a new supernova in M74. So joining me this week, a few familiar faces, so I'll get to those first. We've got Sandy Springman down at the Arecibo Observatory. Sandy.
Hi.
We've got David Dickinson.
Hey,
trusty, dependable David Dickinson in Florida, aka Astrokites. And we've got, from a long hiatus, traveling, who knows where she's been.
I don't know either.
Everywhere. Nicole Gallucci. But now you're back home.
I've been everywhere.
I am home.
I've been everywhere.
Yes, that.
And we've got a fresh recruit this week. We've got Brian Koberlein, who has been doing a fantastic job of reporting all kinds of cool space stuff on Google+. Brian, can you give people a bit of a background on who you are and what you do and what you know?
I'm an astrophysicist. I'm a physics professor at Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York. I just finished a book on computational astrophysics, and I've been writing on Google Plus every day for 6 months now.
Yeah, seriously, if you haven't already, go and circle Brian on Google+. He has been using it as his blogging platform and just writing these terrific explainers on space and astronomy, some very accessible stuff, some that's quite technical but really interesting. I've been secret facility in the Seattle area.
Oh. Do you want to talk about that now?
I totally want to talk
Blue
about
Origin.
I totally want to talk about that right now. I want to
cool.
push everything one down the list and get to hear this. So if people don't know, Alan Boyle had exclusive access to the Blue Origin facility. This is the rocket launch company being created by Jeff Bezos from Amazon fame. What happened?
Well, I think the only reason why I got to go down there is because I live in the area, and Blue Origin wanted to
I live in the area.
Well, you can't come down when they call up in the morning and say, hey, can you come over to Kent and talk with Rob Meyerson. But anyway, Blue Origin was actually, they built this facility, 7 years ago, but they really haven't had any journalists in. It's just the sort of thing where they work very quietly. Some might call it hush-hush or secretive. They just don't want to talk about stuff until they have stuff to talk about. And so they want to talk about an issue having to do with Kennedy Space Center's Launch Pad 39A, one of the launch pads that the shuttle used and is now considered surplus. NASA wants to turn that over to a commercial facility, and SpaceX has applied to get that pad. SpaceX was founded by billionaire Elon Musk, and now Blue Origin, which was founded by Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos, also would like to have control of that launch pad. And so they wanted to get the word out about that, and I think they figured if we're going to talk with this guy who's in the neighborhood, sure, why don't we bring him down and see if he gets into any upstart, kind of the scrappy underdog. But now SpaceX looks like it's really in a great position to make itself one of the top companies in spaceflight, as far as getting stuff to the International Space Station and eventually sending astronauts. And so You have companies like Blue Origin, which have been working in the background. They actually did some pretty ambitious tests. Unfortunately, one of their tests went awry when they had a test propulsion vehicle go supersonic, but then
Yeah, I
it had
remember
some
that.
flight instability, and they had to get it crashed. So that was definitely a setback. But it's also a challenge. SpaceX also poses a challenge to the established players such as United Launch Alliance. And so you have this interesting, strange bedfellow situation where United Launch Alliance and Blue Origin are teaming up for a multi-user launch facility that they want to turn Launchpad 39A into. And SpaceX wants to use this for a lot of its commercial launches, also the launches to the space station, as a dedicated facility just for SpaceX. And so that's the issue. Actually, in the last few days, NASA has been kind of signaling that they would probably turn 39A over to SpaceX, and that 39B, the other shuttle launch pad, would become a multi-user facility. 39B would also be used for tests of the Space Launch System, this big, heavy lift rocket that NASA is developing. So it's a very interesting clash of the billionaires. Right now it looks as if Elon Musk and SpaceX are in the lead, but Blue Origin wants to make it.
You know, huge fan of this, and that after Brian had been doing this, I was like, Brian, you got to join us. So, and then also, Brian, I think before we kind of get into the show, I wanted to give you a chance to promote something that you're working on, which I think is just fantastic. You're doing a Kickstarter for a television show.
Right. Well, we're doing a Kickstarter for a series of web videos first, and then we want to expand those into a TV show. It's called Prove Your World, and it's aimed at 8 to 13-year-olds, and its main purpose is to teach scientific understanding and what you might call habits of mind for that age group, how to approach scientific problems. And one of the things we're excited about it is it's based on real questions from kids, and it uses inquiry learning. It's not just here's a cool fact, here's a cool fact. It actually looks at the process of scientific learning, and it has puppets.
Yeah, and so I guess do a search for Prove Your World Kickstarter. You've got 15 days left, I think, on the Kickstarter now, so everyone should check that out and kick in a couple of bucks and help you guys be able to make that pilot and that first run of series. And you're not asking for a lot, and I think that'll be great. I think it's a great niche to teach the kids, so that's fantastic. Wait a second. What? Alan Boyle has joined us at the last minute. All hope was lost.
I don't know. You can hear me?
Beetle.
We can hear you.
Oh, wow. It says I have audio problems. I've got all sorts of issues, but that's just me. You know, just go ahead with what you got. I'll get set up here. Glad to be with you after a little bit of travail.
Now, so that means that I get to add one topic to the list of stories we're going to be talking about today, right?
What topic would that be?
I hear you visited a